My name is Margot Hayes, and the day we buried my husband Ernest was the quietest, most terrible day of my entire life. The love of my life was gone forever. But as I stood there, watching them lower his casket into the cold, wet earth, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from a number I didn't know. It said, "I'm alive." That's not me in the casket. My heart just stopped. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely type. I wrote back, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "I can't say. They're watching. Don't trust our sons." I looked up. I saw Charles and Henry, my own boys, standing there by their father's grave. And in that moment, my world didn't just crumble. It shattered into a million pieces. For 42 years, Ernest was my rock, my best friend. We built a simple, happy life together in our small town of Spring Creek. He had his little bicycle repair shop. I sewed dresses for folks in town. We didn't have much money, but we had more love than anyone I knew. We raised our 2 sons, Charles and Henry, with everything we had. We taught them to be good, honest men, just like their father. But as they got older, something changed. Charles was always so ambitious. He wanted a big life in the city, fancy cars, important jobs. Henry always followed his big brother's lead. They moved away, they started making real money. And they started looking down on our simple life. Their visits home became shorter, less frequent. And when they did come, it was always with this pity, this shame. I'll never forget Charles saying, "Mom, this house is falling apart. You and Dad need to move somewhere better." He was right, the roof leaked and the paint was chipping. But that house, so it was our home. It held every memory of our life together. Ernest saw it before I did. One night on the porch, he said to me, "Margot, money hasn't just changed our boys. It's stolen them from us." I didn't want to believe him. But a mother's heart can only ignore the truth for so long. Then 3 weeks ago, the call came. A voice from the hospital. They said there'd been a terrible accident at the shop. A machine explosion. My world went blurry. My neighbor, dear Doris, had to drive me because I was shaking too much to hold the steering wheel. But when I got to the hospital, Charles and Henry were already there, waiting. How did they know? No one had called them before me. I finally saw Ernest. Oh, he was unrecognizable, covered in bandages, hooked up to so many machines. The doctor said it was bad. Severe burns, a brain injury. And my son, they weren't crying. They weren't comforting me. They were having hushed conversations in the corner. I heard Charles on the phone talking about life insurance policies, beneficiaries. He actually came over to me and said, "Mom, we looked at Dad's insurance. There's a $50,000 policy. It'll help you out." His father was fighting for his life right behind that glass, and he was talking about money. The doctor said there was no hope, but one night when I was alone with him, I held his hand. I told him I loved him, and I felt it, the slightest squeeze back. He was still in there. He was trying to tell me something. 2 days later, he was gone. Charles took charge of everything. The funeral was arranged in a hurry. It felt cheap, rushed. He chose the simplest casket, the shortest service. He said, "It's what Dad would have wanted." But the church was almost empty. Where were all the people whose lives Ernest had touched, whose bikes he'd fixed for free? It didn't make any sense. And then, at the graveside, as I threw the first handful of dirt onto his casket, my phone vibrated with that message. "I'm alive. That's not me in the casket. Don't trust our sons." That night, alone in our quiet, empty house, I was going out of my mind with grief and confusion. I went to Ernest's old wooden desk, and in a drawer I found a note. It was in his handwriting, dated just a week before he died. It read, "Charles keeps pressuring me about the insurance. Says it's for Margot's security. But something feels wrong. I don't trust his intentions. My husband knew something was coming. The messages from the unknown number kept guiding me. One said, 'Check the bank account.' So I did, and I found thousands of dollars missing from our savings, withdrawals I knew nothing about. The bank manager said Ernest had come in to make them, and that our son Charles had been with him, helping him with the paperwork. Another message said, 'Go to the shop.' I finally forced myself to go back to Ernest's workshop, and my heart sank. The place was spotless. There were no black marks on the walls, no broken glass, No signs of any explosion. Every machine was in its place, perfectly intact. The accident never happened. It was all a lie. The final message told me to meet at the corner cafe. I was terrified, but I had to go. There, I met a man named Stephen Callahan. He was a private investigator. He looked me in the eye and said, "Your husband hired me, Margot." He was afraid of his own sons. And then he played a recording for me. It was Charles's voice, cold, clear. "No, we can't wait. The old man is getting suspicious. I have the methanol. It's perfect. The doctors will think it's a stroke. And Mom, she'll be so heartbroken she'll do whatever we say after he's gone. They didn't just let him die. They murdered him. They poisoned my Ernest. And they were planning to do the same to me next." I was numb. But I was also furious. With Stephen's help, I took everything. The recordings, the bank statements, Ernest's note, straight to the police. They listened. They opened an investigation. They even had to exhume Ernest's body. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to agree to. But the autopsy proved it. Lethal levels of methanol. He was poisoned. Charles and Henry were arrested. The evidence at their trial was overwhelming. When those recordings were played in the courtroom, you could have heard a pin drop. They were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Not long after, my son Charles, he took his own life in his cell. The guilt was too much. Henry, he had a complete breakdown. He's in a psychiatric hospital now, lost to his own demons. That was 5 years ago now. I donated every single penny of that blood money insurance to start a foundation in Ernest's name. It helps other families who have been victims of terrible crimes like this. I still live in our house. I painted it a cheerful yellow, his favorite color, and I turned his old workshop into the most beautiful garden. I fill it with roses and sunflowers, just like he loved. People ask me if I miss my sons, and that's a complicated question. I miss the little boys I held in my arms. I miss the children they used to be, but the men they became, those men were strangers. They were monsters shaped by greed. True family isn't about sharing the same blood. It's about love, loyalty, and respect. Ernest was my true family, and because I loved him so much, I found the strength to seek the truth. I found justice for him, and in doing so, I finally found a way to live in peace. Thank you for listening to my story. Please hold your loved ones close, and never ever ignore that feeling in your gut when something doesn't feel right. The truth, Fat, will always find a way out.